Christmas time is over and now it's time to get back into the builds. Unfortunately, I couldn't put a video out over Christmas time. I had originally planned to give myself enough time to make a video each day, although one thing I'm at the mercy of is the sun, and if it's going down, I really don't have a lot of time in the day to actually film a lot of the build. I just don't like the lighting at nighttime, and it usually makes my videos look terrible, and I figured rather than put crappy short videos out, I might as well just wait a few days and then put some good videos out to finish the series off. And if I'm going to be gone for a little while, I might as well come back with a Siamese project, so today what I wanted to do is join two enclosed cubes together. Now, that might sound a little familiar to you, but there was a little twist on this design. You see, whenever I fuse two 3x3s together, I always end up losing the functionality of three of the faces on each of the cubes. So what I wanted to do today is a purer form of something that I've already tried before, which is to join two puzzles at their corners by making a large corner, if that makes any sense. Now, I've already done this before with my extra long hexagonal prism, and I expanded on it even further with the hex geode, but one of the problems I was having with that join is a lot of the pieces were catching when there was some very subtle misalignments between the layers. So the way I wanted to go about fixing this was to sand all of the outer faces down to make the puzzle a little narrower, but before I could do any of that, I had to build it in the first place. So I prepared a couple of 3x3s as I often do, and then I took them over to my bandsaw and tilted the table to 45 degrees. Now, an enclosed cube, for those of you that don't know, is just a 3x3 with edges cut in a band around the center, and I was going to be making two of those. It's worth mentioning that doing a Siamese build actually doubles the piece count effectively, so whenever I do one of these, it's a hell of a lot more work than just building a single puzzle that requires some cutting and filling. But seeing as how I put the series on hold and I now had some time on my hands, this was my Christmas present to me to do a slightly bigger build. I really just wanted to do something crazy. It's been 3x3s for a while, and although I have a few more videos to go, I really want to try some bigger projects. After I'd cut everything, I took the puzzles over to my desk and I got out some epoxy sculpt and began filling all of the pieces. And after that was done, it was time to join two corners together, and so I was going to use the same method as I did for my hex geode, which was I got three pieces of balsa wood out and I joined them together in such a way that I could sit two corners opposite each other and they would line up perfectly. The reason I like using this method is because provided that you've glued the pieces of balsa wood or really any material that you've got together, you can line up the two corners perfectly, and so that's why I like to do it this way. The last time I tried to do this without the balsa wood, it was a nightmare and it really just didn't work. Once I joined the two corners together, I built around them with some epoxy sculpt and I began sanding it down, although I kinda sanded a little too far. It didn't take me long, but I screwed this piece up. So what I've done, it's kinda hard to show on the camera, but I've sanded too far into the cubie here, and as a result, I can't line up this face perfectly with the cubie itself. So what I could do is take off incremental sections just by sanding it and then trying to reassemble it and then doing that again a few times, but that would take a really long time. It's much quicker and much easier for me to just build a new piece, but still kind of annoyed that I did this. I was just rushing a little too much and wasn't concentrating as much as I should have. Time to build another one. Although I had to rebuild the corner extension, I could still sand down the two enclosed cubes, so I took them over to my belt sander and I started sanding all those faces down. I was going to actually sand down a little further than I normally do, which was part of the experiment, but before I could do that, I decided to sand them down to the same dimension that I often sand them to. I figured that since I know how to do that so well, I might as well sand to that level, and then once I join them together, I can focus on getting them down to their final dimension. I repaired the corner piece, and while I was at it, I decided to do all the extensions, seeing as how I had the epoxy sculpt mixed up, and so I had all the extensions ready to be sanded. I took them over to my belt sander and I sanded down the outside faces, that way I could reassemble everything. And after I'd sanded the 2 connected corners, I reassembled everything, and this is what it looked like. Now that everything was reassembled, I took it back over to my belt sander and I started sanding it down into its final shape. As I was sanding everything, I got progressively deeper and deeper, and there were some cavities that opened up that I needed to fill. Luckily, while I was extending the pieces, I had the forethought to fill some of them on the inside, but I didn't get all of them, so I had to repair some of the cavities, and that meant disassembling everything before I got it to its final dimension. This is what the puzzle looked like, and you can see a couple areas that I've already broken through, and those would need to be filled up. I used a blade to widen up some of the holes and peel away some of the melted plastic, and then I stuffed all the pieces full of epoxy sculpt to repair them. And I didn't get a chance to film this part, but after the pieces had hardened, I took them over to my belt sander and I started sanding the entire puzzle down into its final shape. Now that all of that was done, I disassembled everything and I started rounding over all the pieces. I used a nail file to knock off all the sharp edges, and oh god, you guys know the usual technique, the sanding block and the Scotch-Brite, and after I'd rounded over all the pieces, this is the puzzle finally done. I decided to cut the stickers out because I just really wanted to get this puzzle finished, and I'm really happy with how it looks. The original reason I wanted to build this puzzle was because I wanted to have 2 3x3s that were fused together, but they still had full functionality, and I think you can see just by how this puzzle turns that it does have full functionality in each of the 3x3s. And just like the City Council, I'm a week late and over budget, but the important thing is the puzzle is finally done. Now, if I had it my way, this video would have come out a day after the last one, but also if I had it my way, I would have sanded these faces down just a little more. I wanted to make this narrow piece here a bit wider, which would have been the result if I had sanded these faces down a little more, but the Guanlong mechanism doesn't really like to be cut down that far, and I wasn't going to do an experiment in a Siamese modification that's already taken like a week to come out. Unfortunately, the Merry Crimbus got in the way, and I was kind of rushing to get videos out, and as a result, I didn't really like the projects that I was building, and so I just decided rather than put crappy videos out for this series, which lives on long past the series, I would take a couple days off and then come back with some good projects so I could finish the series off properly. And also that means that this series won't finish until next decade. So, that's kind of fun. But anyways, I hope you guys like this puzzle. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time, which will be tomorrow.